Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started in just a moment. Thanks for spending wherever you are with your morning or your lunch or afternoon, evening with us. My name is Stuart DeCew. I'm the executive director of the Yale Center for Business and the Environment, and a joint degree alum from 2011. And I'll be leading the conversation today. With three current joint degrees, we're going to get into their experiences, what they're kind of experimenting with, how they're exploring the program, what the two schools look like, the way you combine them, how do you navigate Yale, all those good things. First, love if everybody could, two functions folks are very familiar with. We'll get into a range of questions that were pre-submitted by folks, as well as ones that we've outlined at the beginning. So this will be about 30, 45 minutes, around the 30, 40 minutes of that. And then any questions that you have that are popping up during this, please use the Q&A function. But right now as well, in the chat, say hello, tell us where you're coming from, where you're at, where you're working, any of those details, that would be great because, we'll see who's interconnected and where you all are. Hey, you may meet someone who's in right around the corner from you that you could have coffee with and talk about a joint education between business and the environment. So this will be a fun hour, we hope. And I'm going to start out just with a quick overview of the joint degree program, how it works, what things look like here, and then Emma, Sam, and Nataliia are going to introduce themselves and kind of why they came to the program, what the experience was like, how they're exploring and working through things here. So just first off, in terms of this place, pardon me. The So the joint degree program builds on a range of different elements at Yale. So folks may or may not be familiar, but Yale was the first place to establish a school of forestry in the United States. At a point when natural resource use and kind of the use of natural resources and exploitation of them was really a prominent conversation in the US that brought the best science over from Europe to kind of establish a place and a home for working professionals, practitioners to be able to work at the front lines of how do you protect, conserve, and support natural resources going forward. The Yale School of Management was the last major business school established in the US. So this is like 125 years almost of the School of the Environment and now almost 50 years of the Yale School of Management. And when the School of Management was established, people were drawn to it. And one of the things that kind of is really indicative of the joint degrees that you have both past and present is when the students got here, they started walking around, knocking on doors between the School of Management and the School of the Environment, then the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and asking, can we combine these two? We should really be able to interconnect and make this happen of getting two master's degrees in 3 years rather than 4. And working with faculty and administrations, through the advocacy of students, this got set up. And it was the first of its kind. So the first program to establish the connection between business and the environment where you could get these 2 degrees. The Yale Center for Business Environment, or CBE, as it's more commonly known, is around here at least, is the center of gravity or the kind of, hub where joint degree students, faculty, staff, alumni, partners all convene and connect around business and the environment issues. And so this was sort of set up at a point where really wanted to make sure that there was a home for all the activity and all the history that had gone on between the two. And that's been built off of with other successive programs with executive MBAs in sustainability. And then we've launched and pioneered a range of certificate programs for working professionals as well that now have hundreds of participants in them on an annual basis. So a lot of different layers of community and interconnection between the two schools over a long period of time. The folks that you're going to talk to today are different ways and approaches of going through the joint degree program. And so there's basically a couple of pathways in. People will apply to both schools independently while they're not on campus, right? And you're accepted into both, and then people can choose where to start. And so with Emma and Nataliia, you're going to get a chance to hear from one student who decided to start at school management, another who decided to start at the School of the Environment, and why, and what are the reasons there. There's also a range of folks who, when they get to campus in their first year at the School of Management or the School of the Environment, decide and say, I really love this community. I really like this place. New Haven's a great city. I'm getting lots out of the interconnections that are there. And I'd love to apply to the other school. And so they then do that in their first year, which is something that Sam did. And she can talk about that process and element and how it worked for her. And then, with both of these, you're doing a formal internship between both summers at each school. You also have an orientation at both schools. And you pay tuition 1 year at one school, 1 year at another, and you go through the core curriculum and formal programming at each during that year, which there's still a reasonable amount of flexibility for you to do other things in and around campus. And then the third year is really paying tuition at one school or the other school, and then lots of flexibility in where you take classes, both at the School of Management, at the School of the Environment, or at any of the other professional schools or places in and around Yale. The community that then is there is this kind of beating heart of the interconnections between business and the environment and the School of Management and the School of the Environment, where they're the kind of connective tissue between the two schools. And then the alumni that come out of it is a really remarkable range of kind of careers and pathways of where they end up. So just to give you a little flavor of it, it's the chief of staff of the EPA right now, or the head of the Environmental League in Massachusetts, are joint degree alumni. The president of CAISO, the independent system operator in California, is a joint degree alum. The person who leads Amazon's climate pledge is a joint degree alum, looking over their whole portfolio of investments. Like the co-founder of Nuveen Green Lending is a joint degree alum. The kind of pioneers of conservation finance at NatureBest at TNC, like CEOs of large timber investing organizations, are joint degree alumni. The CEO of the Port of Portland in Oregon is a joint degree alum. You've got all these people who, in different roles where they've gone through the program and then found different applications for it, from like leading venture capital firms to leading incubators and accelerators to being the heads of ESG investing or kind of climate innovation at large financial services firms. So there's a wide range of outcomes that people then have out of this. And what we want to talk about first, though, is like, what does it start? What does it look like? What's the journey and pathway look like when you get going? And so I'd love to start with Emma. Could you kind of just introduce yourself, describe kind of like why you're here, what you're doing, where you're coming from, give people a flavor of kind of why you entered into this.
Sure. Excited to be here and chat with all of you. I'm Emma. I am a first year joint degree starting at YSE. So I have a full year this year of YSE classes or classes I choose to take at other schools if I'd like. I most recently lived in Florida and New Mexico. And over the last 5 years, between graduation of undergrad and now, I worked at an energy efficiency firm called Energy Solutions. They do program design and implementation for energy efficiency and renewables programs. And I had a few roles. I was a consultant, and then I was a proposal manager, and then I was leading their research and analysis team for business development. And I chose to come to grad school for a few different reasons. I was originally thinking of just doing business school, just doing an MBA. And one of the reasons is I wanted to sort of unlock those higher level positions, those C-suite positions, or potentially start my own firm. The second one is I want to do a bit of a career pivot from energy into more natural resource conservation. So I saw coming to Yale as a great opportunity to build that network and skills and knowledge and comfort in the field. And third, I wanted to understand how business really works from the inside out. I saw some opportunities for improvement in the firm that I was working at, and wanted to like gain the skills and knowledge to be able to enhance things the next place I was working. So I applied to business schools round one that I thought had a really great sustainability focus. And at the recommendation of a lot of people at Yale, also applied to MEMs in that same year. And happy to talk about later why I decided to pursue the MEM as well as why I chose to do YSE first. Definitely a lot of thought went into that choice. And as I mentioned, after Yale, I hope to work at the intersection of business and natural conservation. So I'm thinking my next role might be sustainable sourcing for a multinational food or consumer goods company. Like an example would be Nestle.
Thanks, and lovely to have you here. And Emma is our joint degree ambassador as well, which we'll share information on. So if you have questions or would like to get in touch with people or connect to any of the current students, like Emma is your point person to be able to find all the people that share your interests. So Nataliia, you're in the same boat as Emma, but you chose to kind of start at a different place, starting at SOM. Can you tell us kind of how you got here, your background experience, sort of why you chose Yale, what you're exploring in the joint degree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also super excited to be here. I was kind of in the same shoes a year ago, so I'm really excited to kind of give back. But I'm Nataliia. I'm an international student from Ukraine. I came to US like 7 years ago for my undergrad. I graduated with like a business and math major from my undergrad, and I kind of started in typical strategy consulting. And then I kind of did a lot of like soul searching to figure out like where would I actually want to be in the market. It's not like just generic kind of consulting. And I realized that sustainability is definitely something I was very interested in while I was at school. I took a lot of classes, but at the beginning, I didn't know that you could actually like build a career there. So after that, I moved to sustainable finance at Capital One, where I worked as a business analyst for 2 years. And I was able to kind of gain a lot of skills like GC accounting, and I took a bunch of classes at like Harvard Extension School, which had those like professional courses you can take. And at the same time, I was also leading a nonprofit back home in Ukraine. So I kind of had this like combination of like social, environmental side. And I wanted to go back to school. I always wanted to get an MBA, but at the same time, because I have a business degree from my undergrad, I kind of felt like I don't want to necessarily just duplicate that education. So I wanted to have that like focus on sustainability, especially because I found that that's something that my passion is at. And so I chose Yale because I know like when I was here at the admitted day for SOM, the dean said like a phrase where if you want to make $1 trillion but you don't care how, like you should go to Harvard and Wharton, but like here is not really the place where you would do that. So that really resonated to me because there's definitely that like end society focus at the business school. And then I know YSE is one of the best like environmental schools in the country. So kind of that connection really worked well for me.
Cool. Great to have you here. And Sam, so can you do the same? Introduce yourself, kind of what are the sort of like unique elements of your journey to Yale, kind of where are you at right now? And you're now going through like you've already gone through one summer internship, you're in your second year, like talk a little bit about kind of what that progression and journey looks like.
Sure. I'm also excited to be here with you all today. My name is Sam, and I grew up on a fruit farm in Pennsylvania that really got me interested in the environment and agriculture. I studied environmental science at Duke, so I was pretty familiar with their MEM program at the Nicholas School. And right out of undergrad, I knew I wanted to get my master's degree. So I applied to environmental master's degrees. I applied to the MEM program at Duke and Yale, among a few others as well. I decided to come to Yale and join their MEM program. I found that in undergrad, I learned about a lot of different environmental issues, but wanted to get more of that business application. So I came to Yale. I was planning to specialize in business and the environment through the MEM program. And during orientation in my first couple weeks of classes, I met several joint degree students that I really thought had interesting perspectives and I thought took very pragmatic approaches to environmental issues because many of them already had the core curriculum from SOM. So they were kind of looking at these environmental issues that we talk about at YSE with a different lens. And I thought that's something that I want and I think is going to be very valuable for a career after. So I applied to the MBA during my first year at YSE. There are fall 2 and fall 3 deadlines. So I applied to fall 2. I think it was due the beginning of January, and then got my acceptance in March and decided to enroll. So now I am doing my first year at SOM in the core curriculum. And this past summer, I did have my first internship, as Stu said. I worked as a consultant for Guidehouse in Boulder, Colorado, on their energy, sustainability, and infrastructure teams, helping utilities improve their energy efficiency programs.
Great. Thanks, Sam. And, really cool. I think Sam, like highlighting also some of the kind of the pragmatic elements and skills, its breadth that comes in at SOM from all this core curriculum, the sort of, the elements of systems and scientific thinking, and also the kind of hope and engagement of advocacy that you would get at YSE. And, combine that with the ability to just test and learn rapidly between the two over the course of, the 3 years that you're here. So, Emma, like we run a series at CBA called What the Heck Do I Actually Do, which kind of drives people into like the actual work that someone is doing on a day-to-day basis. Can you drop us into like what does a day and a week look like at YSE as a current joint degree student? Like you've been dropped into campus, like what are you experiencing, like going through, like what's happening here?
Sure, happy to walk through a typical day. A lot of the people, not everybody, but a lot of people at YSE live in East Rock. That's where my apartment is, which is really nice because it's very close to campus. My walk to campus this morning was about 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll bike if I want to get somewhere further on campus. And then like this morning, for example, I usually have classes from 9 or 10 in the morning until noon. So that might be industrial ecology or ecology and conservation of tropical forests. And then over lunch, I'll typically listen to a talk. There's a talk going on almost every day, either in Croon Hall here at YSE or across campus. Especially every Wednesday, there are really great talks called biomes. So I'll usually do that. If there's not one going on, I'll stay in the building and chat with friends. People tend to hang around in the noon hour. And some afternoons I have classes. One of those is managing ecosystems for climate change solutions, or I'll find a quiet place to study. Tons of those. I'm still exploring what my favorites are around campus. And then I'll typically bike to the gym. It's a little bit further, but I think it's like a 5 or 10 minute bike ride to get to the main gym on campus. And in the evenings, typically there's a lot of social activity going on at YSE at any given time. So sometimes I'll go to a potluck at a friend's house or go to salsa lessons. Nataliia and I both went together to a salsa lesson in downtown New Haven that is a mix of Yale and New Haven residents. So I try to mix it up, but there's always something going on.
Cool. Great. Well, that sounds really fun on the salsa lesson. So Nataliia, apart from doing salsa lessons with Emma, like tell us what the day in the life or week in the life looks like when you're at SOM.
Yeah, so SOM has kind of quarter-based system, so your class schedule kind of changes every 1.5 months. But for me, I live in downtown actually, and there's a shuttle, so I always take the shuttle because the walk is 25 minutes, and repeating that every day is a little too tiring. But I usually take a shuttle. My classes usually start around 10 a.m., and then I have like 2 or 3 classes in a day. We have like a lunch hour break, which is usually this time from 11:45 to 12:45 at SOM. And there are tons of events. So it's either clubs are hosting or CBA has some cool speakers or community lunches, which for example happened this week. And there's a lot of free food on those. So if you want free lunch and some new information, that's a great way to spend your lunch hour. Then after kind of my classes end, like we have a lot of team homework, so we're all split into like small learning teams at SOM, and you kind of do homework with that small learning team for the whole year. So we would have some team meetings to kind of catch up on the homework. Maybe I do some like quiet studying in the library here. I also am very interested in like entrepreneurship side. So I work as a venture associate at SciCity, where I kind of support, for example, this year, one of SOM students has like a renewable energy startup focused on Ghana. Like I'm the venture associate assigned to her project. I'll do some work for her. And then I might attend some like evening events, like founders dinner that's happening tonight actually, and then I go home, watch some TV and do homework while watching TV to relax.
Nice. Great. And Sam, so now you've gone through YSE a first year, and now you're in the SOM core. Can you describe for people like what you're seeing as the strengths or connections between both schools? And also, can you just physically describe where they are and how much time it takes to go like between them, and like what's the sort of physical picture on campus? Paint a picture of like where they sit and then what your day looks like moving between them.
Yeah, sure. So YSE and SOM are a 5-minute walk apart. They're very close, like about less than a block. And I am in the core curriculum at SOM with Nataliia. So all of my classes are over here this year, but I'm also a teaching fellow for a course over at the School of the Environment. And I'm over there attending lecture, meeting with the professor, and holding office hours to just help administrate the course 2 days a week. So I'm walking back and forth quite often. I also go to events at both schools. I have friends at both schools. So I'd say right now I'm spending about 75% of my time over at SOM because that's where my courses are, and I'm working with groups to do most of my homework, but about 25% of time over at the School of the Environment. And then in relation to Yale's campus as a whole, the undergrad activity is more towards the downtown area of New Haven, and it's pretty separated from grad student life, which is up near the East Rock neighborhood that Emma referenced earlier. And then did I hit on all your questions, Stu? I knew there were a few there.
Yeah, no, and just also like where you were talking about this before, but like, what do you see now that you're in the core and you've gone through YSE? Like, what are the core strengths of both schools, and like where do they interconnect for you?
Yeah. So I'll start with the core strengths of SOM. I think they do a really good job at giving everyone the same foundation, level the playing field, and give you a lot of really like essential skills for business, like a flavor of everything. Like I have a 6-week marketing class, a 6-week class on finance and like what it means to invest. So I think that kind of gives everyone just like a taste of everything, so you know what's going on. And then over at the School of the Environment, you can either choose breadth or depth. Some people will really go in on one issue, like maybe you're really passionate in like ecology and take industrial ecology and forest ecology and a lot of different classes in that area. Or some people will just take a class in like as many different topics as they can because they want to be more of a broad level environmental manager and just understand a lot of different topics. Yeah, so I think the degree can really be what you want to make it and kind of like what your intentions are coming into grad school and what you want to get out of it.
Great. Thanks all for kind of painting a picture of sort of what this looks like, and as you walk by the School of Management or out of the School of Management where I'm sitting right now to Emma is sitting in the School of the Environment, like it's this 5-minute walk. You also pass by a natural history museum. That's awesome. You also pass by the Jackson School of International Affairs, the environmental science building, and some really tasty food trucks. And the hockey rink is right there. So like it's a really close campus where you kind of interconnect. And that's also something where, as folks are talking about this, you have access to the broader university in a way that is somewhat unique, of where classes are available and you can take like classes anywhere once you've completed your core requirements. So you have, a joint degree student is just dying to get into a chair making class at the architecture school, which he doesn't think he's going to get into ever. That's like a very specific one. Or people take like language classes or drama or poetry or elements to kind of where they're supplementing or interconnecting things. So a lot of flexibility in that, both in where you start and then where you take classes once you've gotten through the core requirements. So I'd love to hear from each of you, what's your favorite experience, class, element that you had right now during your time at Yale? Like what stands out as the thing? And Sam, let's start with you. Like, what's the thing that sort of pops to your head of like, oh, this really like, this just struck a tuning fork in my soul. This was just like the thing that worked for me here at Yale.
Sure. So it's really hard to pinpoint one event or class, but I think just the community at YSE has really made this experience great for me. Like Emma was saying, people hang around and eat lunch together. They're very friendly. Everyone's approachable. And the same thing at SOM, really. Like you meet everyone at orientation and you keep saying hi to them and having small conversations in the hallways. So I really think like the social side of grad school has surprised me and been really great. And I'll highlight maybe one of my favorite events is the fall festival or harvest festival, excuse me, that YSE puts on every fall at their Yale Myers Forest property. correct me if I'm wrong, Stu, I think it's like 8,000 acres up in Northeast Connecticut. It's like a little summer camp. They have cabins, they have a food hall, there's trails and lakes, and it's just this
They
very
would
wholesome
describe it as a
environment.
working forest, not a summer camp. So like,
Yes, okay, it is. It is, but they have cabins and facilities, and they host a festival. There's fresh pressed cider, timber
Really good
competitions.
maple syrup up there too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really a great place to visit, and there are many opportunities to get up to Yale Myers Forest, either during orientation or during different events throughout the year.
Cool. And Nataliia, what's your favorite moment so far? Like you've just been immersed in lots of things, and it could totally be salsa dancing with Emma if that's it. But like, what's the thing that, is working for you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question while Sam was kind of talking about hers, and I thought that actually there's a joint degree retreat that I'm not gonna go into too much detail on because it's meant to be mysterious, but I think having that like point where during like Labor Day weekend, all joint degrees kind of come together in Great Mountain Forest and kind of spending together those like 2.5 days and getting to know people that are doing kind of similar things as you, have the same values as you, was like the moment where like, wow, I belong here. Like this is the type of people I wanted to meet. This is like all the reasons I wanted to come here. So I would say that was kind of one of my defining moments. And I was like, I made the right choice. Like I came to the right place and I'm surrounded by the right people.
Great. And Emma, what stands out for you?
Definitely want to reiterate what both Sam and Nataliia said. Those have both been amazing experiences for me. And I want to say too, the community at YSE so far has been great because I thought that what I was interested in was very esoteric, but it turns out like people at YSE, current students, have been engaged in what I want to do before, so I can chat with them, and alumni are already working in positions that I want to be in the future. So that's been like really exciting. In terms of one experience, the Natural History Museum that Stu mentioned, I actually grew up in Southern Connecticut, so I had been to, as a kid, it's called the Peabody Museum, and it's so fun. It's such a cool museum with really great, like huge, massive skeletons of dinosaurs and things like that in a living museum. And as a YSE student, I've been able to go behind the scenes of the museum, which is pretty spectacular, and see all of the samples that they have sort of in stock in the back. And that includes like samples that like Charles Darwin took of plants years ago, and like his handwritten notes are in the samples there. So I thought that was really spectacular. It's kind of nerdy, but it's fun to go behind the scenes of places like the Peabody.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I love the Peabody Museum. Ever you need a moment of inspiration, you just walk by and get to see like a 7-year-old or 8-year-old come out of there and just have their mind blown by science, and it like makes you want to like work a little harder when you're going around campus. There's a lot of things we can explore and discuss. There's like there are questions coming in on the chat. One thing I love to just chat on briefly is the requirements that both admissions offices have. And I would really encourage folks, there are admissions officers that you can reach out to at both schools who will be able to give you the real specifics on all the requirements. And you can, we'll drop those in the chat and you can, I've got those in there here. And you can reach out to them. A couple of like high level elements and things that are there for admissions requirements. SOM publishes, the Yale School of Management publishes the profile of the class on the site. And really there are a couple of elements that you'll sort of see in there of just like, there's these profiles of kind of like what people have at GPA or what people have on test scores that are between certain percentiles. And that's really where they're looking for the bulk of people who are in the admissions pool to fit within those. And there's an emphasis on both like professional, the time you've worked and kind of some professional experience at SOM, which Sam could talk about. There are differences in that of where you can go straight from undergrad into the programs and then in the Silver Scholars Program, which Sam is a part of. There are also interest in like the quantitative scores, the kind of group work that Nataliia is describing and Sam are describing. Like they just have a lot of tight group work where you're doing lots of like work rapidly with some simple but rapid math. And so like some of the testing on the quantitative side is actually helpful to sort of how well can you keep up and what does that look like in that element. And so you can sort of get a sense of what they're looking for in those general characteristics. At the School of the Environment, like having classes that are in hard science in your background or experience there is something that folks are looking for. And also really having a commitment to and a focus on leadership in the environmental sector. And where you've done that either through volunteer work or activity previously in a course of study where you've committed to it, or in your career is something that they're looking to see and understand. So there are separate decisions that are made at both schools, and we ask that you just indicate you're applying to the joint program between two. Both schools are lovely independent places and have this deep connection. And so they really want to understand what the fit is and the reasons for you are at each individually. And they want to, we work to make sure that the joint degree program works for everybody. So you're applying to both independently, and they have slightly different criteria, which we think leads to having really great students and alumni that come from the program. So can you talk a little bit, we're going to get into questions from everybody here, but some of these are coming in and they came in the pre-recorded questions as well. Like outcomes or areas, like where do you want to go with this? Like, what do you imagine when you project out, like you're doing with the joint degree, like having met with some joint degree alumni or talked with people who are further on through this, like, what does it look like at the, going forward? Emma, maybe you want to start. You were talking about your esoteric elements of like what you're interested in, and like, well, what does it look like where you're seeing that in practice at the school? Like, where do you think you're going to go with this?
Yeah, so after talking with people both in the application process and since getting here, I think I have a really clear idea of what I want my next position to look like. I think I want it to be in global supply chain sourcing for a multinational company. That could be, not sure where exactly yet, but like big names that alumni currently work at that I've spoken with include Nestle, McDonald's, Walmart, Driscoll's. They're all joint degree alumni working at those kind of places. And I'm really interested in supply chain sourcing because that's a place where business and nature intersect. And it's a really, it's a newer field, or it's a newer position where there's a lot of capacity for innovation and sort of discovering new ways of doing agriculture or sourcing in general that's going to make a big impact, especially if you work at one of these bigger companies like McDonald's or Nestle, to hopefully reduce deforestation and improve labor practices. So there's a lot of intersectionality there of human rights, nature, climate change, all sorts of different issues that I care about.
Cool. That's neat. I'm looking forward to sort of seeing how that works and how we can help. Nataliia, same for you. Like, what do you think? How do you put this together? What are you piecing together as like, what internships am I going to play around with? Where does this end up? Like, what's the outcome? And it can be murky, right? We don't need to like have exact paths that we know, but like, what does it potentially appear like?
Yeah, so I'm personally very passionate in just business strategy and kind of how that connects with sustainability. So one of the topics I'm like really interested in exploring here is something I've seen in my like professional life is kind of sustainability is often perceived as this like not profitable, kind of costly thing that business leaders are forced to do and they don't really want to. And I actually don't believe that that's true. So one of the things I want to research is kind of how can you show that sustainability can actually lead to better profits, better financial results. And something like, for example, I was talking to alumni as part of CBAE visiting alumni, and one of the alumni told me that kind of finding people who are really good in understanding sustainability and also really good in understanding business strategy is very difficult. Like usually you have somebody who's really good at strategy, doesn't understand much of what's going on with climate change, or somebody who's really passionate about climate change, but they don't really understand how business works. And so kind of finding that intersection is something I'm really interested in. I'm also very passionate about kind of entrepreneurship. So hopefully for me, that looks like starting a company that kind of helps other companies find those like new markets or new products where they can make more money while also creating better impact. And in terms of internships, like this upcoming summer, I'll be doing like an implementation consulting internship. So I have some strategy consulting background, but the change management and kind of finding how the big sustainability ideas you have can actually be implemented with the existing organizations is one of the biggest challenges of sustainability. So I'm really excited to kind of go into the implementation strategy side and see like what are the best practices in that world and how they can be applied back to the sustainability.
Great. And Sam, you know, I've talked about this one a bit individually, but like where do you see yourself ending up? Like what are the places that ideally, you know, like right after graduation, maybe 5, like 10 years out, like what does it look like to combine these two and then put them into work?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I grew up on a farm and I also came right to Yale out of undergrad. And so that means that I'm a Silver Scholar at the School of Management. And the Silver Scholar program is set up for people who come right out of undergrad without any full-time work experience. And between their 2 years of the MBA, they have to take at least one gap year to work full-time. And so for me, I accepted a return offer to go back to the consulting firm I was at this summer, where I will work for a year, maybe 2, full-time on their energy efficiency team, and then come back to finish my dual degree at some point in the next year or 2. And I am very passionate about sustainable agriculture, helping small farmers. There's a lot of small farmers around where I grew up that are struggling with market opportunities for their products. And so I want to ultimately, hopefully, have my own independent consulting firm that can work with those small farmers that are really important to me.
Cool. Great. So we've got like lots of other questions coming in both in the chat and then that were pre-submitted that I'll run through, and please make sure that if you have questions that are coming up, drop them in the Q&A function. Ideally, we can also grab them in the chat as well. But love to have people touch on and maybe this is like, you know, Sam, you know, people always have a question about like, okay, so I gain all this from being in the joint degree program, but are there things that I'm missing out on? Like, am I missing out on parts of the MBA program that are going on in B school? Or are there different pressures or areas? So like in your second year, you know, you described having like a really strong community at YSE and then going into SOM. Can you just describe kind of like what the opportunity is, but what's the challenge and the pressure that you feel in a second year like that way?
Yeah, so there's immense opportunity to make really good connections and strong connections at both schools. And I think that really starts at orientation. Both schools have a pretty thorough orientation where you really get to know your classmates well. And so I made a bunch of friends at YSE last year during orientation in my first 2 semesters that I continued to keep in contact with now during my second year, but I also made new friends at SOM during orientation this year. So I'm constantly trying to balance social events or hanging out with both sets of friends, taking advantage of resources at both schools. And it can feel like drinking out of a fire hose and like you're constantly busy. So I think that would be the challenge, but there's great opportunity to meet people coming from both sides of the program and to make really lasting and meaningful connections with both.
Cool. Great. And so like these are kind of the things you like wouldn't necessarily see or know about the joint degree program. There's this like, you know, social rush. It's like the second year is the busiest because you've got these 2 groups coming together and there's so much activity between them. Emma, like what's something else that you kind of wish you'd known about the joint degree before you got to Yale that you're sort of experiencing now or being like, and that could be, you know, positive, or it could be something where it's like, oh, I'm trying to sort this out.
On the positive end, I would say the joint degree community is much like stronger, more embedded than I even expected. It's a really like welcoming, warm, tight-knit community. And as soon as we got on campus as first years, somebody hosted I think it was like a little fire with pizza and drinks, so we could all get to know each other immediately. And the joint degree community has been really helpful in terms of understanding what resources to take advantage of on campus. It's like having built-in like sort of older brothers and sisters because they've already walked this path. They know what classes you should or shouldn't take, what opportunities are available. And they also have like they have already the network at SOM and at YSE that extends beyond just the people who are here now as well. They've been able to connect me with people who are a year out, 2 years out, even 3 years out, because of the way the joint degree sort of expands over those 3 years. So, and I would say also we connect a lot. Like there's so many opportunities for us that are sort of I guess built in. Like every Monday we have a night where we all get together at somebody's apartment and connect. And then every week or every few weeks we have some other social activity going on. So I would say there's just the strength of the like friendships and networking and in the community is really great.
Yeah, that's great. And people have mentioned this. Sam talked about drinking from a fire hose. Nataliia, like, how did you pick the extracurricular activities to do? Because it sounds like, you're working as a venture associate at Sci-City. Like, where did you filter and sort when you come into a place like this with all these opportunities? Like, how did you make the choices, sort of narrow in, okay, here are the things that I'd like to experiment with?
Yeah, I would say having like clarity on kind of why you're going to grad school. I mean, you should have the clarity anyways, because it's a big investment of your time, like opportunity cost, money. So for me, I really kind of think about like with the goals that I have for these 3 years or what I want to do after, does like this opportunity take me further with that or it doesn't? So kind of I picked the venture associate role because like one of my goals is to help kind of companies find those sustainability opportunities. And within like size associate role, I can actually do like a lot of my own research. So something I'm creating is like sustainability primer for startups to like help the companies going through accelerator programs actually incorporate sustainability at the ground up. Or for example, I'm a nonprofit board fellow at SOM. I wanted to kind of see what it is, what does it mean to be on a board of a nonprofit? Like I led a nonprofit before, kind of how can I give back? There are a lot of environmental focused nonprofits in New Haven. So I feel like I'll be able to use the skills that I'm actually getting and kind of get those case studies of like helping organizations with their strategies. And the same goes for kind of social impact consulting. So I would say really having that priorities and kind of knowing at least in which area and what I'm trying to get out of these 3 years, like really helps me to kind of distill that. I still feel like it's a fire hose. Like I'm doing a lot of things and I have very little time, but I feel like everything I'm doing is helping me kind of move forward with my goals too.
Yeah, I mean, I've been here now 16 years and I still am surprised by the things that pop up around the corner or, the next day. So it's always a lot to take in. It's a global train station. Like there's always somebody cool showing up or some program that's there that you're then, oh, wow, like I'd really love to be a part of that. And it's sort of balancing those elements and time that are there. And the people that show up too, just there's a couple of questions that came up pre and then during the chat of like, who's teaching and what are they teaching and what are the types of things that are there and what are the connections to practitioners. So I'll just paint a little picture here of like the largest elective class at the Yale School of Environment and the Yale School of Management is a class called Renewable Energy Project Finance, which is taught by a joint degree alum, Daniel Gross, who's the head of Amazon's Climate Pledge. And that's 220 students all taking like deal documents from a real deal and then creating a deep financial model of what does it look like to kind of build the project finance model for this. You have leading practitioners in kind of regenerative agricultural sustainable food systems, like Tegan Engel teaching the regenerative agriculture lab at the Yale School of the Environment. Richard Kaufman, who's an SOM alum, teaches a course on financing green technologies. He was formerly at the DOE. He led Good Energies. He is the head like energy czar of the state of New York. And so you find what you're at these professional schools, you've got a lot of practitioners that are drawn in to teach who have their feet firmly planted in the real world and then are combining and blending a lot of these academic insights, as well as tenured faculty and faculty members who are here full-time doing that. So it's a combination of both that you'll experience and that you can kind of, navigate a path through and with. One of the other things that like people are, curious about is the age or point to join or start the program, because people are at different points. Like I was a joint degree and I'd worked for over a decade when I'd come back. Like I was, in my 30s when I started. There was this like brunch club called Grown and Sexy that we used to have actually, which was like for the 30 plus crowd while we were at Yale. I don't know if the first one was true, the second might not have been. But like what kind of point of your career do you feel like is the best time? Is there a best time to join this or get involved? Like, you're at different stages and moments. So like, what does it look like to pop in? When did you know it was right to kind of like start and go to this joint degree program? And Emma, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. So for me, the right time was first to get my footing in industry. I really wanted to understand what it was like to work in the real world first, because I wasn't really sure where I wanted my career to take me. So I wanted to build some skills and knowledge around what it means to work in an organization so that I could take that knowledge to grad school and be a little bit more focused in where I want to go afterwards. So for me, the right timing would I don't know if I would say it's a number of years. Like I ended up taking 5 years. I think part of that is because of COVID, but like people in the joint degree as well as in each of the programs have really diverse number of years between undergrad and starting their first year of grad school. So I wouldn't say there's like an optimal year for everybody. It definitely varies depending on what you're prioritizing, what you're looking for.
Cool. And Sam, same, like you described this in some detail, but do you sort of like how does it feel to sort of be undergrad straight into a graduate program and now kind of moving into this testing and learning of like career approaches?
Yeah, so I came right out of undergrad. I had several different internships and research experiences in undergrad that made me feel very confident. I wanted to get my master's of environmental management, and I had a pretty good idea on what I wanted to do. So I got some advice from my advisors in undergrad. They said, like, you could just go straight through. You'll probably want this degree eventually. So that's what I did. I was still also feeling like energized about school. I wasn't burnout yet. And I'm really glad I've kind of gone straight through, but it's very different for everyone. And it's about knowing yourself and what you want to do and how you're feeling about, school or your current position you're in. And if you feel ready to go back. Yeah. And I think there was one more point I had, but it left my mind. So I'll leave it at that.
Great. And Nataliia, like switching gears slightly, but coming to something Emma was talking about of like the connections to like where you've sort of worked in industry or technical elements. Like right now, like what are the kind of ways you connect with alumni or external partners or folks from industry? Like what are the pathways and opportunities to do that you're taking advantage of like immediately in your first year?
Yeah, so I would say CBA Visiting Mentors is absolutely amazing resource because like you literally have all these alumni and there are like Calendly calendars on there that you can go and like book the time with them. And there's like Chief Sustainability Officer of Johnson & Johnson there, Managing Director of like a private equity company. There are like a lot of people who are really far along their careers who want to give back. I would say that's like a great first start. Like if you don't know where else to go, like I would start there just to kind of talk with people and see what different areas are. I would also say we have Business and Environment Club that's kind of connected between SOM and YSE, and there were coffee chats with second years and some third year joint degrees. That's also like a really great no pressure way to kind of explore different areas of sustainability and learn how does that look like. A lot of people who come to these programs already have some amazing experience in areas of sustainability before. So kind of using that as like a sounding board to hear how different industries are working, what was their job like before you kind of go into making those formal connections is great. SOM has this like SOM Connect website where you basically can go on LinkedIn, find alumni you want to connect with, and then search them on that website and find their like actual emails. So you don't send those short 200 character blurbs on LinkedIn. We also have actually a LinkedIn group with all the joint degrees, which is like a great kind of stock of everyone who graduated. So you can kind of go through the list and find who you can connect with. So I feel like there's actually more resources to connect with people than I can use than like the other way around.
Cool. That's great. And Emma, thank you. I see you actively answering these questions that are in the chat over there. So much appreciated. Emma, can you talk a little bit about kind of what you're planning on the business and environment side too? Like, what can you get to build here or do? Like, you all are part of building a new conference on business and the environment. So just a couple of weeks ago, we had a clean energy conference with almost 400 people or 500 people attending. 40 different organizations, 20 large, like almost like 20 on the kind of early stage company side, hundreds of resumes submitted from students to all participants. So, like, what does it look like, Emma, now for you to be able to like build another conference or convening at Yale, and who are you hoping to attract?
Sure, yeah. So there are, like as Stu was saying, there are tons of opportunities in each of the schools and across campus. If there's something that you feel like is missing, there's an opportunity to create it and things can move very quickly. A few students last year at SOM saw the need, and I think both schools actually saw a need to have a conference focused on business and environment more broadly, as opposed to just having an energy focused conference. So that's what we're working on. This is going to be the inaugural business and environment conference at Yale. And the topic for this year is going to be looking at continuing to grow economically while also fostering sustainability. So we're focusing on a few different aspects of that, including, scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions in businesses, as well as sort of beyond the scopes, beyond greenhouse gases. How can businesses become more sustainable over time, and financing the transition that we're all headed into right now or in the midst of. So it's been a really fun opportunity to get to know other people. Since it's a joint conference, there are people at SOM, people at YSE, as well as people at other schools who are all volunteering. I think Jackson is represented in our volunteer group as well, the Jackson School of Public Policy. So it's a great opportunity to meet other people across Yale and also to build our own networks. Like I had a conversation with Stu, I've had conversations with others at Yale to understand what networks are out there and who we can tap into to attract to this conference. And the main audience is going to be Yale students, but we're hoping to bring in people across different industries and different function areas to try to better understand what it means to be a business that cares about sustainability.
Great. And Sam, Nataliia, anything that you're building right now or like playing around with? Like, what is the kind of Yale umbrella, the smart people, the resources, the kind of landscape here allow you to like invest in and build that you potentially otherwise wouldn't be able to do in another spot?
So I'm going at the SciCity. In addition to my student job, I'm also part of the Launchpad program, which is kind of a very high-level incubator program that gives you access. And something that I have worked on the side while at my previous roles too, I've created a lot of content on kind of the topic of impact and kind of thinking about what's your strategy of like creating the best impact you can in terms of sustainability. So I'm kind of like working through that idea, seeing what opportunities are. And I would say, being in the place where a lot of people do want to improve their like social or environmental impact. A lot of people came to SOM to kind of work on the social impact side. People at YSE want to work environmental side. It's really interesting because you kind of have access to like potentially target audience of your future startup already here. You can like test things quickly, you can connect with people quickly, and while using all the formalized resources that exist here with like SciCity and just the entrepreneurship programs on campus too.
Cool. Yeah, and SciCity, so that's the Sci Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale, which is the kind of home for all entrepreneurial activity or innovation activity, students all across campus. And this is part of an ecosystem. If you're interested in building something new, like that's a place where you can test immediately, start out on a small scale. We've also developed and built in collaboration with a broader region, state, and other actors, a incubator in New Haven called Climate Haven, which about half of the companies there are coming out of the university. And so one of them, Oxalis Energy, was founded by joint degree alum Harrison Meyer. They just, worked through the programs, met each other through actually CBA programming and a climate innovation intensive, launched their business, raised $4.5 million in their seed round, and are now hiring in New Haven and building their company out. And so like this path is one that's sort of like where we can develop all the infrastructure and resources for where you test and learn and build something. If you're interested in doing something completely new or starting a new venture, in addition to you can go work for the largest places in the world or start the newest thing. So both of those are options. Sam, to you as well, is there anything like you're building, playing around with, investing in that you want to share?
Yeah, so I think something that Yale has that I think is really special and unique are a lot of opportunities to get involved with institutions outside of Yale in your coursework. And an example I'll give is I took a clinical class last spring called Strategies for Land Conservation, and the most of the coursework was working with a nonprofit organization on a project that would help advance some initiative at their organization. So for me, it was mapping vulnerable areas in Connecticut that have a lot of biodiversity but are vulnerable to urban sprawl. And so I think that having an opportunity to make a real impact with your coursework, it's not just something you're submitting to a professor for a grade, but something that's going to make a difference in the world, can be really fulfilling and also motivating for working on your schoolwork. But at the same time, you're building skills and connections and networks that will benefit you down the road as well.
Cool. Yeah, and that's something, what Sam's bringing up, it's something we see every year, the applied nature and the kind of constant work in real world projects while you're here, is that this is like, every year we see students who become the kind of 101st or 151st expert in the world on a topic, where they've, a 28 or 29-year-old has spent 6-9 months a year on a topic, and then they're able to put something out into the world that other people are distributing, looking at, being guided by. There's a really good report on bridging the regenerative agriculture gap that a couple of financing gap that a couple of joint degrees did just a couple of years ago, or of the past few years. Wonderful example of that, of where it's getting shared. We just have a little bit of time left, so I'm dropping both Emma and my information in the chat for kind of connections, ambassadors, other areas. The other thing I would encourage everybody to do, if you want to get a flavor of kind of what the constant rhythm of events and activities and opportunities are, go sign up for the CBAE newsletter, which then will come in every week, and you'll get a sense of, oh, here are all the things at Yale. You can go to our website and just find it at the bottom, sign up, and you'll be able to get a sense of the content and areas. We dropped any specific questions for the admissions offices. We dropped their information in the chat, as well as emails on timing for applications. YSEs is coming up in a couple of months. The application deadline is early December. The second round of the School of Management is in early January. So those are a few of the ones to kind of look out for, prepare for as you're moving forward. Team, any final thoughts, words of inspiration for the crew that's joined us online today? I'd really appreciate everybody spending their lunch, morning, evening with us online here.
I would just say it's worth it to kind of go after what you're really passionate about. I feel like when you're already in the working world, it's easy to kind of go the risk averse route. Like, oh, I already have a job. Like, that's a safe way for me to do. But like, this program is a great way to do that leap of like personal and professional growth. And I would really recommend kind of thinking more in risk-seeking terms when it comes to getting great education from an Ivy League school, because there's not much downside of that.
Cool. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for attending and showing interest in the joint degree program at Yale. Please reach out with any questions. I can put my email in the chat, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Likewise, I appreciate everybody hopping on. I think what you're doing now is really great, is learning more about the program and what's out there. Continue talking to people, continue attending webinars, and feel free to reach out. So many people at Yale are willing to connect. It's a really welcoming, accessible environment. And take time for yourself as well. I know the application process can be stressful across different schools. So make sure to focus on your well-being as well.
Cool. Thank you, Emma. And one final thing, like whenever you're on these with this school or any other, like ask us for stories. Like there's lots of things you can learn from, like when people get into a flow and they start telling you a story, they'll give you all sorts of information that may be like great for you or not great for you, because somebody will just be talking and telling you, okay, look, this is how my life works. And you'll be like, that sounds like not full enough or too busy or not the right community. So when you can get us into story mode, then you get yourself the kind of best information about if this is going to be a fit for you. So hopefully the stories we've been telling about this place and what makes sense about it connect. And if there are ones that you didn't get or that are missing, please reach out and we'll see if we can get you into those right ones, so that you can determine if this place is a great fit. But we really appreciate you taking the time. And any further information, admissions offices, people here, everyone at CBay, we're here to help. So have a lovely one, and we hope to see you soon.